Hi everyone, it's Monique, and now I want to jump into late adulthood. You guys should know that late adulthood is covering chapters 17 and 18 of your slides, text, whatever, course materials. Um, and so we're just going to jump into 17. Just acknowledge that we see in different areas of the world, getting older is viewed differently. And it should be noted that in the United States, oftentimes we have a very negative outlook on getting older and what that looks like, and things like that. Like in the class, like if we were meeting virtually, a lot of times I'll ask people, okay, well, tell me what you know about old people or older people or whatever, and I'll emphasize the fact that I'm looking for stereotypes, right? And I'll get like an influx of, well, they smell like this and they move slow and they do this and they do that, right? But a lot of it has a negative connotation. Whereas in other parts of the world, getting older is held in like higher esteem and things like that. So just acknowledge that it's viewed differently depending on where you are in your culture and things like that. So I also want to take some time to talk to you guys about the reasons why older people might be moody or maybe a little touch and go, whatever it is, right? So I think going over these next few slides is going to kind of give you guys a little bit more background information as to some of the experiences that people in late adulthood might be experiencing. With that, in our country, we also have a great deal of ageism around old people. And what ageism is it's like prejudice or discrimination against people based on age. And we usually see this with people getting older. We do see it in other ages, obviously, but in general, we see it with the older generation. Now, the global population is aging, which means that people are starting to live longer, right? Centennials are the fastest growing population. This could be due to a ton of things, healthcare being one, right? Also a decline in fertility, economic growth, being educated about like wellness, taking care of your body, things like that. Those all are contributing factors to why the global population is aging. There's also different types of aging. We can have primary aging and we can have secondary aging. And with primary, it's natural, it's gradual, it's progressive, just aging, right? Things that kind of happen. With secondary, it results from like disease or abuse or misuse of your body, okay? And then there's also something referred to as functional age. You guys will see that in your course materials. And this is basically it's not necessarily your chronological age, not how old you are, but how old you act. How old is your brain or your mind? How old are you physically? Like what kinds of things are you doing, right? Like we always like to look at social media when there's like older people on social media and they are doing like dances and you're like, what? What's going on there, right? So their functional age is probably different from their actual chronological age, right? Or even people who just like they have a different vibe. Like you could tell that they're probably not adhering to their chronological age, right? Like my mom's like that. She acts like she's my age, right? So it's different. There are also different. I want to highlight some vocab now, okay? So we have gerontology, ology meaning the study of, right? So the study of aging and getting older, right? We have geriatrics, which is a branch of medicine associated with the process of aging. There also are life expectancy, longevity, and lifespan, okay? Those three, I get confused, but luckily we always have Google, right? Just because I don't use them that often, but essentially, life expectancy is how old you're statistically likely to live up to, right? So in humans, it's around 78 and some change, right? So statistically, they're bringing in all those factors as to why, right? And then longevity is your actual length of life. So Bob lived till he was 89, longevity, okay? And lifespan is the longest period of life that we've seen in any members of a species. Now, every time I teach this class, people always tell me that it's older and older and older, right? My students usually tell me. And this semester, when I was teaching the class, I decided not to Google it because everybody always corrects me, right? So my students actually Googled it in the class, and this semester, the age that they came up with was 122. So the oldest person, according to my students' research, quick Google, not, backed up by anything, was 122. So it's just interesting to note. And things like diversity, as with every topic that we cover, it bears a heavy weight on this. So we talk about like race, SES, where people are living, right? Geography. Like we look at like Asian countries and how people are living super long there, right? Or even, I believe that people, again, no research backing this, but I would assume that people in the city probably may not live as much longer as people in more rural areas where the air quality is different, where the food is different, right? So it's just different or interesting. So there are different theories on like death, dying, how we age, things like that. And there are two kind of umbrella categories that I really want to go over with you. Your course materials goes into the intricacies of each category. So there's the genetic pre-programming theories, and this suggests that aging is determined by genetics, right? Like for instance, the Hayflick limit, the idea that our cells can only divide a certain amount of time, and once it's done, and then, that's when we die. Also, there are variable theories, which kind of rely more heavily on like us doing some type of damage or things happening to our bodies. We know just from being around people in older generations that we physically see how aging looks a lot of times, like wrinkles or your skin being a lot less tight, right? A little looser, varicose veins, thinning of hair, gray hairs, a shorter stature that you typically see more in women, just because of like osteoporosis and stuff like that. But then there are also physical changes that we don't necessarily see, like the diminished lung capacity, less of a great immune system, like not as functional. Also heart health starts to decline, things like that. The brain also loses some of its volume. And remember when we spoke before about myelin and how myelin had started to break down, right, in adulthood. And so now the myelin is breaking down even more. So those messages are getting received and sent a little slower. Okay. Also, there are like, so with the brain's ability to like process things a little quicker, a little slower, I'm sorry. There are also executive functioning declines that you see, and also certain memories you start to see a decline with. So for instance, episodic memory, like the ability to remember autobiographical events, things from your own life, like things that happened, right? So it might be like, oh, remember last spring when we went fishing, right? Or it might be like, well, I remember when I was a young kid when I fell off my bike and such happened, right? So there are these different memories that those start to decline and not be as potent as they would have been. However, on the flip side of that, getting older doesn't really affect your semantic memory. So like your memory for like facts and things like that, like all that declarative stuff doesn't really affect it, nor does it affect your procedural memory. So like if you've ever went through the motions doing something just kind of automatically, whether it be driving or whatever, it's not like learning those processes aren't directly affected by aging. There are activities that we can do to help retain certain memories, right? Like that's why we see older people doing crossword puzzles and different things like that, playing Jeopardy, those types of things. Something that I thought was interesting is that people who are in late adulthood tend to sleep as well as dream less than other ages. Sexual function is still active. However, there might be a decline in sexual desire, and I don't have the stats on this, but this we could probably attribute to things like vaginal dryness of menopause, or testosterone levels lowering in men, right, after the age of 30 that we spoke about before. But something else to note is that there's not a lot of awareness in that population regarding like STIs and things like that. Regarding STIs and things like that. So just try and make sure that we're educating the people around us, whether as long as it's appropriate at work or whatever. Older people, a lot of times we don't, as a society, we don't necessarily think of them as sexual beings, but they are, and it's important to talk about certain infections or diseases that can be, you know, sexually transmitted with them, and educate them and talk about protection and you know, things like that. 20% of people who live in nursing homes report mental health problems. However, only 3% are seeking out help. And we know that that may be attributed to things like the stigma around mental health, cultural things, like even within like age differences in different cohorts, right? But one of the most prominent things that in your book actually highlights this is the lack of accessibility, or perceived lack of accessibility. So people not knowing that they qualify for certain services, or not being able to get to certain services, or not being able to understand how to have those services come to them, right? So there's that. Dementia is another thing that we see, and what this is it's a general deterioration of cognitive and behavioral functioning. And it can, like, two of the ways that your slides kind of talks about it navigating is through like Alzheimer's disease as well as Parkinson's. So Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disorder characterized by cognitive and bodily functioning deterioration. A lot of times people always kind of attribute this to like memory loss, things like that, right? And it can be really, really scary for both the people who are actually going through it as well as their families. And it could be like heartbreaking, you know, losing certain memories like who someone is, or almost kind of like one of my students had described it as like losing a sense of yourself. So it's really tough to watch, and I would imagine it's even tougher to go through, right? Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurological disorder characterized by tremors and motor functioning issues, as well as posture. And Parkinson's is also accompanied often with things like depression and things like that. So like people will like shake or fall a lot with Parkinson's. It's a lot to keep up with. So that wraps up our lecture for the chapter 17, which is highlighting physical and cognitive development in late adulthood, and we will jump right into chapter 18, which is on psychosocial. So if you guys have any questions at all, please just contact me, whatever you need. All right, see you soon.